ready to introduce the first speaker, who needs very little introduction. But I will give him an introduction, and I will show you this book here, available at a very reasonable price on Amazon.com. Two of the leaders in green chemistry are here today to talk to us. We're going to hear first from Dr. Paul Anastas. He's Assistant Administrator for the EPA's Office of Research and Development and the Science Advisor to the EPA. He's widely known as one of the fathers of green chemistry for his groundbreaking research on the design, manufacture and use of environmentally friendly chemicals. He was trained as an organic chemist on chemical synthesis, and he's worked on design of safer chemicals, bio-based polymers and new methodologies for chemical synthesis that are more efficient and less hazardous to the environment. Paul earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts at Boston and his MA and PhD in chemistry from Brandeis. And as I mentioned, he's one of the authors of this terrific book here that a lot of us have on our desktops. With that, it's my honor to introduce Professor Paul Anastas to give the first talk here. Paul, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. There we go. All right. What an honor it is to be here speaking with you. An honor to be on the program with such titans. John Warner was mentioned. Titans like Bob Grubbs, Bob Bergman, Henry Brinzer. Environmental health scientists like Lynn Goldman, John Belbis, the entire program. This is truly an honor. This is truly an event. And it's truly worthy of the subject matter. Because make no mistake about it, green chemistry has caught the imagination of people not just in the field of chemistry, not just in the chemical industry, not just in the United States, but around the world, across sectors. And why? Why? Because as we recognize that we have an imperative, we have no choice but to shift our focus on how we attain sustainability in a sustainable society, we're going to need very different tools than the tools that brought us to where we are today. And that toolbox is being filled by the molecular architects, the molecular designers. When we think about sustainability, I'll quote my boss, Administrator Jackson. She says, when reflecting about the approaches that over the past 40 years have given us cleaner air, cleaner water, cleaner land, that those approaches are important in making things less bad. My words, not hers. But she says the difference between sustainability and these old approaches is the difference between, quote, treating a disease and pursuing wellness. And as we think about the challenge of making environmental and health goals simultaneously with economic goals and job growth goals, it is these tools that start at the molecular level that are going to be an essential part of where we need to go. So the key word on the title is innovation. Because sustainability has an ironic nature to it. We're not really talking about sustaining the status quo. Quite frankly, to anyone understanding the status of our society and our civilization, recognizes the status quo as a profanity. And so innovation, thinking differently, asking different questions, bringing different tools to the equation is what it's all about. It's about how we make new products, new processes, and the reason that people's imaginations have been captured, the reason that I have devoted my professional life to this endeavor, as have many of you, is simply because of this. That all we have in the world, everything that we see, touch, and feel, is going to be energy and matter. And what green chemistry is all about at its heart is the redesign of the matter, the material that is the basis of our society and our economy, the material that is used to generate, store, and transport our energy, the design parameters that we put on the new molecules that we introduce into the universe, quite frankly, that the universe has not seen or is not used to. This is why the breadth of green chemistry touches every aspect of our lives, everything that we encounter in our daily lives. Now, when we're talking about this great grand vision of sustainability, I know that we've got a very diverse audience here, and there's an awful lot of well-versed folks in this audience, but sometimes it helps pictorially to get your arms around at least even one sliver of that big problem, and nobody does it better than Chris Jordan, who has, I want to give credit to this particular collection. Does anybody want to take a guess at what this might be? Abstract art? Anybody? Maybe we'll zoom in. Yeah, those are the 60,000 plastic bags used every 5 seconds. Sandy Beach. Zooming in. Those are the cell phones retired every day in the United States alone. I happen to have lost those 6 in the middle, personally. There we go. Moonscape. That's right. Every 5 minutes. So we've got some issues. We've got some issues that are at the heart of molecular design, that issues such as persistence. I often tell my colleagues, my chemistry colleagues, that it's very important and it's just fine to want to pursue immortality. It's probably not fine to impart immortality upon the things that you make. So we know that persistence is an issue. We know that there are, a number of concerns for everything from toothpaste to baby bibs to, baby bottles, and let's just go for it, shall we? There's no shortage of concerns about the nature of our substances. And green chemistry views these concerns as a design challenge. That basically we have 150, 200 years of excellence of making our molecules, making our materials functional for a particular performance, to carry out a particular function. And we've defined performance as accomplishing that function. Green chemistry understands that you're not done with your design challenge when you've just simply accomplished that function. You need to accomplish that function without it causing adverse consequence to humans and the environment. There is nothing elegant about synthetic methodologies where most of the atoms wind up in the waste stream rather than the product. There is nothing elegant about substances that accomplish a narrowly defined function and impart consequence to the current and future generations. So redefining synthetic elegance, chemical elegance, is what green chemistry really embraces. We know that for every minute that I'm speaking here, about 3 tons of toxic substances are being released directly to the air, water, and land. and that's in the US only. Now, there have been tremendous efforts over the decades in addressing some of these issues. Tremendous efforts. Cleaning things up, making things less polluted, less contaminated. But often, we have done these important things, these right things, and we've done them wrong. We've done them in an unsustainable manner. What do I mean by that? I mean that we know the carnival game Whack-A-Mole. And where one mole pops up, you hit it, and the other one pops up next, right? And we've played that with water, toxics, climate, biodiversity, and energy. And we say, we understand that sustainability and sustainability framework, climate is inextricably linked to energy, energy to water, water to agriculture, agriculture to health, and on and on. And too often we hear, and our sustainability program is to reduce our carbon footprint. What? Systems thinking and systems problems require system solutions. So how do we think in terms of systems so we don't do the right things wrong? For instance, we know that we can accomplish the goal of producing biofuels. How do we produce biofuels in a way that doesn't compete with food, feed, and land use options? We've been doing the right thing, pursuing renewable fuels, and perhaps doing it in an unsustainable way. We know that we all want pure water, disinfected water, and we know that we can certainly do it by using acutely lethal substances that persist with their disinfection byproducts. The right thing, disinfecting our water, but are we doing it in a sustainable way? We know that we all want to capture the power of the sun, transform it. We've been able to do it in tremendous efficiency, pushing the barriers, and we know how to do it using scarce, toxic, depleting trace metals. We know that we can increase critical food yields using persistent and toxic pesticides. And we know that we can make energy-efficient lighting in ways that introduce neurotoxins like mercury into the manufacturing scheme and end of life. Now, how did we get there? Was it some kind of conspiracy, some kind of cabal that came together to do bad things? Of course not. These were real problems. People were dying because of the water pollution. People were starving. The energy crisis is real. Noble intentions, brilliant breakthroughs, and a narrow focus. A lack of a systems focus that allows you to do the right things wrong. It's one of my favorite cartoons. Sure glad the hole isn't in our end. The bad news is we're all in the same boat. It's only got one boat, and in the absence of systems thinking, we're going to keep on getting what we've always got. Because as usual, Einstein says it best, that problems can't be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. So what is this new level of awareness that green chemistry embraces and adopts? It's a simple one-sentence definition. The design of chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate the use and generation of hazardous substances. Perhaps design is the key word. Because you can't do design by accident. Design is the first statement of human intention. And when you use this to redefine performance, what it is the goals are for what we want to introduce into the universe, quite frankly, this changes the questions we ask, and so it changes the solutions that we're able to generate. Now, I could use this as an eye chart, but I won't. Because, quite frankly, I know from experience this takes me a semester to go through. But if I were to walk through the 12 principles, I'd be talking about how you want to make sure your synthetic methodologies are atom economical, and how catalysis is central to carrying out our transformations. You want to use non-toxic methods and feedstocks that are renewable and end products that are degradable. And when I got through this, you would say, well, Paul, I know John agrees, well, Paul, that's pretty much common sense. Those are pretty obvious. They're almost trivial. Except for one thing. They bear almost no relationship to how we do things generally or traditionally. So we know that The substances we make are the vast majority of which, 96% of the materials that are introduced into commerce are made from depleting feedstocks. We know that substances that are made to be bioavailable and persist are in everyone's body here in the auditorium. We know that I'm not saying that we're all going to die, and what I'm saying is we know as chemists how to design things so that they degrade and don't persist. We know that the vast majority of our safety and anti-terrorism efforts on our chemical sites are too often focused on guns, guards, and gates rather than redesigning the intrinsic nature of the substances and the transformation so that they're less vulnerable to attack, and on and on. So yes, are the 12 principles common sense? They are. Is common sense as common as it needs to be? Perhaps not. So it does cut across the life cycle. You can ask yourself, can green chemistry reduce waste? Absolutely. Can it make a process more efficient? Absolutely. Is that where it stops? Absolutely not. We're looking from the origins of the feedstocks through manufacturing use all the way to the end of life and using those end-of-life products as new feedstocks. So this is a systems perspective. I'd like to give a few examples of contrasting how often we've done things traditionally. Some of the plastics and adhesives that we make do have very reactive starting materials with various initiators which have toxicity concerns. We have additives for everything from strength and stiffness and color and stability. That's not how the muscle business does it. Who's been down by the shore? Reached in on a rock, tried to pull a muscle off? Anybody done that? Okay, 3 people have done that. Is it easy? No. Now let's review. It's making these strong substances using very unreactive starting materials from very dilute feedstock solutions at ambient temperature and pressure. And by the way, for good measure, it's doing it underwater. 3.4 billion years of design is something worth paying attention to. So the last year, about a year and a half ago, I had a whole lot of time on my hands, and I was redoing a bathroom. Now, I don't know if folks have redone a bathroom, but I was down there trying to get the tiles up. Getting the tiles up, and I'm scraping my knuckles, and I'm cursing, and I'm swearing with a chisel, and I'm going at it, and these things don't want to come up, and it's just really... And right before I pass out, I read the label that says only use in well-ventilated area. That's actually not how the gecko does it. Does anybody? Can anybody tell me what chemical adhesive the gecko slathers on the bottoms of his feet to stick to the ceiling? Yeah, close enough. Exactly. Millions of submicron keratin fibers using weak force interactions in order to be able to pick the feet up, put it down, and it's using those stories. Now, if anybody says, "Well, we ought to make tape and adhesives that can do this," and we should go out and harvest all of the geckos and take the... Oh, I'm sorry. I won't stand for that. But somebody has used the lessons. This is a 1.5 foot long Superman with a square. Thank you, Spider-Man. My goodness, Spider-Man with a square centimeter of gecko tape that was made, and this happened to be made by a company in Minnesota that has been replicated. So it's using the principles. It's using the creativity. This is what we're talking about with regard to innovation. One of the great tools in the green chemistry toolbox is biomimicry and bioinspiration. The abalone shell, twice as hard as many of our high-tech ceramics and behaves like a metal to some degree under stress. And again, the abalone ceramics factory. Dilute solution, ambient temperature and pressures. Now, is that how we make many of our high-tech ceramics? Now, they call it heat-beaten tree, but I have a question for the audience. How many people in the audience have bones? Okay, many. I do too. Now, and my bones are pretty hard. How many people have been heated at 3,000 degrees for 50 hours? Okay. So what's my point? This is a wonderful example that John Warner often uses. What's my point? That is it intrinsic to the performance that you need to heat, beat, and treat? Or can you use principles of molecular self-assembly using proton templates in order to achieve the performance you want in more sustainable ways? These are some of the lessons. This is some of the transformative innovations that are taking place. And by the way, you might say the one on the right is neater, but it's exactly those interstitial spaces that allow it to behave like a metal under stress. So these are the principles. And I put them up not to, for no other reason than to say, thinking in terms of a system, it's not just about a noble wish. It's about design protocols. Because it would be a very bold statement for me to suggest that green chemistry could be applied to everything from pharmaceuticals to agriculture to packaging to lighting and energy and automotive and electronics. That would be a bold. I'm not suggesting that it could be applied to these areas. I'm suggesting that it already has been applied to all of these industry sectors and award-winning technologies that have been recognized by the Presidential Green Chemistry Challenge Awards. This award has been replicated in many different forms in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, in Japan, and Australia. So it comes back to the breadth. When you're talking about molecular design, when you're talking about molecular architecture, this is the power and the potential. So how do we start thinking about transformative innovations? I don't know if we can see at the bottom of this slide, but we're looking at investments made versus the benefits achieved. For a certain investment of time, resources, brain cells, you can optimize the existing solution, an incremental improvement. What do we say? Getting a few more miles per gallon on an internal combustion engine. Or you can re-engineer the system. Maybe you want to move away from internal combustion engines. Maybe you want to go to plug-in. Maybe you want to go to fuel cell. Or you can redefine the problem. Maybe you're talking about human access. Maybe you're talking about human mobility. Because all of my colleagues, especially my engineering colleagues, know that how you define the problem is going to determine what degrees of freedom you have and the possible solutions you'll be able to achieve. And so when we're talking about transformative innovation, the kind of leapfrog innovations that we're going to need in order to get off the unsustainable trajectory that we're on, it's not going to be 10% more efficient. It's not going to be 50% more efficient. It's going to be the 4x, 10x type of improvements of effectiveness. To illustrate this, this is a picture of an event that happened up in Scandinavia, I believe, where a little white van went into the harbor. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but they needed to get that van out of the harbor. So they brought in the crane. So far, so good. All's well. There we go. We got the van. Okay, what could possibly go wrong? Look at that. So what do? Come on, bigger crane, darn right. Right, bigger crane. Now that's a crane. That's a crane. All right, there we go. It should be out any second. Einstein says it best. So we need to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, when we're trying to achieve the noble goal of sustainability, when we're trying to ensure that the chemicals that are part of our daily lives, the basis of our society, the basis of our economy, are we using the new tools, the new approaches, asking the new questions, developing the new science that's going to be necessary? Or are we just using the same approaches, tools, fighting the same fights. So, when we talk about transformative innovation, not just incrementalism, when we talk about thinking different, there's one aspect that I just want to focus on, and that is a fundamental concept of transformative innovations is the evolution toward ideality, where you get all of the performance of a product without the product existing itself. What did he just say? All of the performance of the product without the product existing itself. It's not so far-fetched. Most of us grew up with telephone wires going along our streets, and most of us are all carrying some version of this in our pocket. We're getting all of the performance of the telephone wires, but the telephone wires largely no longer exist. What does that mean for chemistry, engineering, systems? Well, a lot of folks know that the way coffee was decaffeinated for quite some time was using methylene chloride. Does anybody know if there's any problems with methylene chloride? I'll just say, I have never heard anyone go into a Starbucks and order a grande latte with a little bit of suspect carcinogen in it. So we moved on to the incremental improvement is how do you use liquid CO2, supercritical CO2 to decaffeinate our coffee. This isn't even considered a solvent by the FDA, I believe. But what's the transformative? What's the leapfrog technology? These are coffee beans being grown without caffeine. Now, these happen to be being grown in Hawaii without that are not genetically modified. Other versions are. And I'll be the first one to say we always have to look across the life cycle. But thinking about these kind of transformative innovations is part of the thinking that we need. We know that there's a number of concerns for dyes, the nature of the dyes themselves, the manufacturing processes. We know that folks are generating cotton and also more recently silk that is already colored with different hues. We know that there were concerns for detergent. The phosphates, eutrophication, hypoxia that was out there. And the incremental improvement was using a concentrated form of the detergent, using less of it. What would be the leapfrog? It's no longer science fiction to discuss self-cleaning clothes. Some of this work coming out of the DARPA 21st Century Soldier work, where it's not only repellent resistant but also self-cleaning. But I use this example for a particular reason. If you're a company that makes detergent, are you going to be the company that makes self-cleaning clothes? Likely not. There's a great Dilbert cartoon where Dilbert's sitting there and the phone rings, and at the top of the panel says, "Company without a business plan." So he's looking at the phone and he says, "What should I do? What should I do?" The next panel, it says, "Company with a business plan." The phone rings. Dilbert picks it up and says, "We don't do that." So defining your business, but also disrupting yourself, whether you're a company, whether you're an academic department or institution, whether you're a federal agency, disruptive thinking is something that will be absolutely necessary for getting off this unsustainable trajectory. We know how to waterproof surfaces, we know how to perfluorinate things, but we also know that that's not the way the lotus leaf does it. That it uses basically microstructure geometry in order to create hydrophobic surfaces so that you get beating up. The beating up causes the water droplets to roll off, gathering up the dirt, and this has been transformed into such things as lotus sand paints that are used in buildings more frequently in Europe, but there might be more recent work here in the U.S. that's happening as well. So, what does this mean for chemistry, for engineering, for the push of this? Does it mean achieving structure without rigidity and strength without weight? Does it mean solvency without solvents or catalysis without a catalyst? Transformations without covalent bond formations or And when is a waste not a waste? Of course, when it's transformed into useful feedstocks. The list can go on, and it's as endless as the imaginations of the people at this university, at other universities, at other companies, at small businesses around the world. And when we talk about the power and the potential of green chemistry, we need to recognize that all of the essential elements of design, filling that toolbox, filling that scientific perspective, needs to happen in a context. We all know that there are far too many discoveries, far too much knowledge that's not impacting the world, that's not changing the world, that's not transforming the trajectory that we're on. The beauty of this event today is recognizing the core, the heart of green chemistry as the science it is, being coupled with the necessary steps that will be essential, indispensable in creating the environment to turn that science into innovation, into impact, into changing our trajectory. That coupling of the fundamental science with the pulls that need to be structured in society are absolutely essential. The reason that green chemistry has captured people's imaginations is because of what it can do. What this conference is focusing on is what it will do. How do you turn it from theory, demonstrated accomplishments, into reality that changes people's lives? So why am I just tremendously optimistic? Because I opened this talk by saying that all we have in this world is matter and energy. I lied. We have commitment, creativity, innovation, spirit, perspective that's being brought to bear on one of the greatest challenges of our time, or quite frankly, of any time. That is making a sustainable civilization. Now, I believe that science and technology is up to the task, and unleashing the power of that science, creating the environment where that science and technology can change the trajectory, is going to be absolutely essential. And we will engage in this with the urgency, with the commitment, with the focus that we need to, because we can, and we will because we must. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
What a great way to kick off the day today. That was truly inspirational. We have some time before our first coffee break for some questions. Before you ask a question, we have some microphones that we'll pass around. We are webcasting this conference downstairs to another group of people who can't fit in the room, but also out to the rest of the world. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone and you can ask a question.
Given what's going on in Japan these days, I'm wondering what green chemistry's view, perspective, and maybe also EPA's view is on nuclear energy.
Thank you for that question. It's an important question. It's an important question. When you look at any technology from a green chemistry, a green engineering perspective, there's certain foundations that you look at. And at the basis of green chemistry and green engineering is, at the heart of it, is how do you ensure that the inherent nature of technology, whether they're chemicals or systems, are as unable as possible to manifest adverse consequences to humans and the environment. So this is a matter of design. Looking at this analysis of considering the circumstantial versus the intrinsic, we know that there are many technologies that were developed at various levels of awareness over the past century, over the course of the Industrial Revolution, or at the state of the science, at the state of the technology, that took substances that were hazardous, could cause adverse consequence, and we tried to make them as acceptable as possible from a risk perspective, pretty much from a risk perspective, to make them as less bad as possible. When we look at the design challenges of today, and we look at the challenge of the topic of this conference today, we need to understand that we don't want to just load up unsustainable technologies with technological advantages to try to make them less bad. We want to look at how we look at our future technologies, whether it's our energy technologies, whether it's our material technologies, such that they are intrinsically less capable of causing adverse consequences. I think that actually answers your question, from my personal perspective.
Yes. So the title of your talk was Innovation for Sustainability.
Yeah.
And I know innovation has been a big theme of this federal administration. A lot of that focused around energy, probably rightfully so, but could you talk a little bit about how this fits into that picture? What are the tools being used, especially towards commercialization of these types of technology?
Oh, absolutely. And so it was a while ago that Administrator Lisa Jackson gave a speech at the National Press Club. She was talking about how we are so proud of the history of what has been able to be accomplished in improving the quality of air, water, or land, but also recognize that it has been focused on minimizing, reducing, eliminating, restricting, controlling the bad things. When we're looking at innovation, we're talking about what you can create, what you can invent. And she said, and I quote, "I have no interest in leading an agency that only tells us what we can't do. I want to focus on what we can do together." And so across the agency, I'm lucky enough to chair the Science and Technology Policy Council, how we look at our approaches to not just controlling the bad, but informing and empowering the good. Now, government has an important role to play, but it certainly is not appropriate for government to play every role. And so when you look across the technology life cycle, from basic research and discovery and demonstration and validation and commercialization to ultimate impact, what not only the agency but across the government is looking at, where are the appropriate places to intervene? Providing funding for basic research, I think there's general agreement that that's something to do. Catalyzing the development and validation of particular technologies, perhaps in some cases, and on through. So that's something that's being done not just at EPA, not just at DOE, but across the government. And I think it's really, as you mentioned, a major focus of how, as green chemistry has always sought to do, how do you meet environmental and health goals and economic goals simultaneously? Because when we're talking about sustainability, we need to be talking about environmental and health benefit while achieving economic goals for societal benefit.
Hi, thank you very much for an interesting and very illuminating talk. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
My question is around your definition of green chemistry. I noticed it didn't include a reference to energy or carbon, atmospheric carbon. How do you reconcile those competing needs, interests, concerns with your definition of green chemistry, or do you include it somehow? Thanks.
There's a popular cereal commercial out there where the tagline is, "It's in there." And so when we're talking about the material basis of our world, including the materials used to generate, store, transport our energy, we really are looking at the nature of how we generate and store our energy, how we are looking at all of our materials, everything from pharmaceuticals to plastics and on and on. And so the definition and the principles really do cover the full spectrum.
I just had a question about your view of the role of basic science in a green chemistry paradigm. I noticed a couple of things you said during your talk. One was that design is inherently something that cannot happen by accident, and you later mentioned that there were, I think in your words, too many discoveries being made that aren't really improving society or improving how we live. And I certainly agree with the latter point, but in terms of design not happening by accident, I was just thinking of how in the history of science and technology there have been various discoveries that have had enormous impact on human lives for the better that were discovered accidentally. Do you think there's still a place for basic science that's not set upon with the aim of finding something particular to cure a particular ill, but that has the potential to be built on later on?
Wonderful question. Let me make it clear. Basic science is absolutely essential. Is absolutely essential. Period. Full stop. Discovery can happen by accident. Design cannot happen by accident. So you're 100% right about discovery. But when you're talking about designing you need to know the goals, the methodologies, the techniques, the framework for what you're trying to achieve. Discovery, you don't need that. Discovery, all you need is a little bit of serendipity, and maybe that can happen in a little luck. And that certainly can and has happened. But there's the old joke that probably everybody has heard of what is it that, let's see, research transforms money into knowledge, and innovation turns knowledge into money. And so how do we make sure that we do both of those equations, that we make sure that we have the fundamental understanding, the basic research that's absolutely necessary, with also the perspective of how we want to have this impact society.
Hello. That question was a good introduction to my question, and my question is, or rather, my inquiry is, could you comment on, from the point of view of the history of chemistry, is why the principle of the low-hanging fruit has not been applied more frequently, and that is, if there is chemistry in natural products through like we observe them through, like you said, the ideas of biomimicry. Why have we not turned to the principle of the low-hanging fruit, of things that are readily available, if not observable? Why haven't we turned to that more frequently or more readily? The principle of the low-hanging fruit, things that are, within our means of observations.
Okay. So observation and understanding are certainly related, but they're not identical. And so we certainly have Herculean accomplishments in the history of chemistry. I think that any fair observer would have to say that it is just an astounding tribute to humankind, what has been accomplished through chemistry. But does that necessarily mean that we've always been working on the right things, the broadest things with the right perspective? No, we often look at things with a perspective that is based on the template to come, and only at certain times we look transformationally in different ways and ask different questions, and that's where chemistry and all sciences is at its best. For instance, we have done amazing work on how we build covalent bonds. Covalency is, no pun intended, been the backbone of so much of chemistry. And we use weak force interactions to understand properties. We use weak force interactions to inform how syntheses may proceed. But do we use them in our designs, to design properties, to design syntheses? I'd say that, and I look to John Warner as a great pioneer in this area, of how we ask different questions in ways that, now of course, nature has been using weak force interactions far better than we have, and because we haven't focused as well as we might. It's not to say that there's no work going on. There's some brilliant work going on. It's just it pales by comparison to some of the possibilities. I think I probably should just finish by saying that I often like to quote John F. Kennedy when he said that the great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and realistic. The myth that's out there is that we can't have the quality of our daily life, the new products, the new innovations, all the wonderful luxuries of modern society without toxic substances, without hazardous substances, without things that are causing us to be unsustainable. Green chemistry is belying that myth every day, and it's because of the vision of people in this room, people around the world, and that is why I will, I think, always be the most optimistic person in any room. Thank you.